welcome everyone. My name is Dundrup. I'm the SPC here at the center. So just briefly want to welcome Venerable Kartsön back. He's a good friend of the center. He's been teaching for a couple of years now. So not a new teacher, but one of our most favorite teachers that we try to have as often as we possibly can. So we're so grateful that we have this relationship with Venerable Kartsön. We hope at some point that he's able to tour the United States, come to the physical Gompa. But until that's possible, we will continue to make invitations for these wonderful, wonderful virtual teachings. So over to you, Venerable. Thank you so much for teaching yet again.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dundrup. And again, apologies for the time mix-up. It's been really nice to connect with Tibetan Buddhism Center. Just told Dundrup that I've been looking every once in a while at the calendar of Tibetan Buddhism, and I'm always in awe of how much is happening at the center. So I think that probably most of it is accredited to you, Dundrup, but also to the dedicated team of students and volunteers and moderators and hosts and so forth. So thank you very much for everyone who is involved in that endeavor, particularly since, as I just spoken with Dundrup, we've transitioned to a world that is controlled by Zoom. And it's somewhat more difficult to get people engaged actively in teachings which are given through Zoom. So it seems that you guys have been doing a fantastic job. And yeah, I would like to visit the US at some point and definitely see some friends from Tibetan Buddhism Center. So if it happens in the next year or two, thumbs up for everyone. When I started working with Tibetan Buddhism, offering sessions, I was working full-time for Chinrezig Institute. I was in one place, which made it easier to look at my schedule and being able to commit to to a teaching program that had some continuation. But I left my job at Chinrezig Institute I left it 2 years ago, and I've been traveling since then. So it's more difficult to plan ahead, but I'm still happy to offer help whenever needed, depending on the time. And so Dundrup wrote me a message a few weeks ago asking if I could talk about joyous effort, and particularly the forces which we gather together, contributing conditions for developing joyous effort. Hey, Lorna. And so this is what we'll do in the next couple of sessions. But before that, let's take just a couple of minutes to correct the motivation. When we correct the motivation at the beginning of the session, first off, with going for refuge, it makes all of our discussion, our engagement together, a Buddhist practice contributing to the causes for own liberation, and definitely good causes in samsara, but even more than that, causes for getting out of samsara. And when we also add to that the bodhicitta motivation, it contributes to the collections leading us to the state of enlightenment. So it's always good, not only in our personal practice, but also in any Dhamma activity that we do, when we listen to teachings, when we discuss teachings together. It's always good to make sure that we have the right intention. So let's maybe take a minute or two just to make sure that our mind is in the right space. We can take maybe a few deep breaths and make sure that our body is not tense, that our body is relaxed. And we can shift the focus to a breathing cycle and count a round of 10 breaths. and use each breath as an anchor for a mind that can settle in, can also spread out and go deeper for 10 breaths. And at the beginning of our session, in thinking that we're going to think of joyous effort, which is part of the Mahayana system, Mahayana practice, motivated by bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. And we can think that we're not alone in that session. We're surrounded by limitless sentient beings, extending everywhere, front and back, right and left, above and below. All of us are sharing the same subjective intentionality, thinking, may I be happy, not experience even the slightest bit of suffering. Also, all of us are equal, are the same in terms of having a Buddha nature, the ability to open our mind and heart when the right causes and conditions are encountered. The causes and conditions consist of having faith and trust in the teachings of the Buddha, which are still available to us, having spiritual teachers to guide us along the way. And so we activate our Buddha nature when we develop compassion to infinite living beings. All of them are around us, in thinking, not only may they be free from suffering, but also thinking that I myself will free them from suffering. And to be able to do so in the best possible way, I need to become Buddha with boundless ability to reach out and connect with others according to their own disposition. To be able to develop my fullest potential to blossom into a state of Buddha, I rely upon the Buddha, the teacher. I rely upon the mind of the Buddha, fully developed mind, with utmost realization, complete elimination of all faults. And I also rely upon Sangha, countless beings right from the time of the Buddha to the present day. I rely upon countless bodhisattvas, Arya bodhisattvas, which are actual Sangha members. And so in visualizing the Buddha in front of us, surrounded by Buddhas and bodhisattvas, for us, they embody, they represent the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. We can think, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dhamma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dhamma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the teachings to the Dhamma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. All right. And so John Drobla asked me to speak about the 4 conducive conditions for developing joyous effort, but I thought that in order to speak about them, I just want to maybe speak in general about joyous effort in general, and that will lead us to particularly looking at the 4 forces. And so normally when we speak of joyous effort, we do so when we discuss the 6 perfections, the practices of bodhisattvas motivated by great compassion and demand of enlightenment, bodhicitta. And the perfections themselves were taught in a particular order. When you look at Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation of the steps of the path to enlightenment, the Lamrim Chema, which is the most extensive presentation, or when you look at a more abridged or condensed presentation of the Lamrim, the perfections are always presented in the following way. First of all, we have the perfection of generosity, then ethics, then patience, then joyous effort, meditation or concentration, dhyana, and finally the perfection of wisdom. In fact, the most important perfection for us to develop is the perfection of wisdom, the 6th perfection, because using the 6 perfections, using wisdom, we can eliminate all of our limitations, all of our limited state of mind, afflictive obscurations, cognitive obscurations. To be able to completely remove them, we have to have wisdom, without which it would be impossible. But in order to develop this penetrative wisdom, this really super powerful wisdom, we need to have a super focused mind, a concentrated mind. I think that all of us are in a similar boat, maybe traveling to different destinations, but the boat is pretty much the same. When I sit for my daily meditation practice, I have good days and I have days which are not that good. But within a few seconds or a couple of minutes or 5 minutes, my mind gets a little bit wobbly, it gets distracted. I start thinking of food or friends or where I need to go and what I need to do. And so there are thoughts that always occur to my mind during the meditative practice. And sometimes I can just notice those thoughts and not get involved with the content of these thoughts, but often I do get carried away by this stream of thoughts that arise in my meditation. And so long as I do get carried away by those thoughts for that long, the power of wisdom will still be reduced. Really, to be able to develop this penetrative wisdom, I have to have a super focused mind that is able to concentrate, a mind that we call the mind of shamatha, concentration of shamatha, which is a special type of concentration in which the mind becomes at will. It is able to stay focused single-pointedly on one object, without falling prey to rumination, distraction, thoughts, and so forth. But also on top of that, the mind needs to have super duper clarity, enhanced clarity. So to be able to have wisdom, I need to have concentration. To be able to have concentration, I have to have joyous effort, the 4th perfection. Without joyous effort, there's no way that I'd be able to develop this powerful concentration. It takes so much time and effort to be able to develop this concentration of shamatha. So I need to have joyous effort, and in order to be able to persevere with joyous effort, I need to have patience, because I will encounter, it is guaranteed that I will encounter lots of obstacles and difficulties, and I will need patience. I will need patience to deal with external circumstances, but also with difficulties that arise from within, with disappointment and confusion and a sense of agitation that is sometimes coming from within. But also I will need to have the ability to deal with external circumstances that will challenge my ability to put those teachings into practice. And so I will need to have patience to be able to joyously persevere. And in order to have patience, I will definitely need to have an ethical framework. Without being able to set some limits and borders to what I can do and what I cannot do, it'd be difficult to really be patient with external and internal circumstances. So creating a framework of ethical conduct is really helpful in terms of developing patience. And really the biggest hindrance for developing an ethical conduct is attachment. And so when I practice generosity, I'm working against my sense of attachment. So in that particular order, the 6 perfections were taught as generosity and ethics and patience. And the 4th one is joyous effort. And not only that, also when you look at Shantideva's presentation of the Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, Shantideva says that in essence, the practice of the 6 perfections is mainly a mental practice. The practice of generosity is not contingent on eliminating all poverty. It is impossible to eliminate all poverty because had it been possible, the Buddha or the Buddhas would have done it a long time ago. And also the practice of ethics is primarily a mental practice and definitely patience. And also the practice of joyous effort. And so the definition of joyous effort in Tibetan is delighting in virtue, or being totally enthused about it, being totally enthused about doing the right thing. That's the meaning of joyous effort. The word for that in Tibetan is tsundru. And the same word tsundru is also used in colloquial Tibetan to describe someone that is really diligent in whatever they do. But you can be diligent in what you do without really liking it, without being totally enthused about it. Here, when we're speaking about it in a Dhamma context, it's not just working hard in your physical posture, dedicating a lot of time every day for your meditation. It's mainly about this mental attitude in which you're happy to do it. You're enthused about doing that because you know that this is the right thing to do. Or at least on a personal level, this is the right thing for you to do. And so to develop that enthusiasm about virtue, we of course need to know what virtue is, but also in general, it connects really well with the presentation of karma, with actions that we take and the result that they bring. If we develop that inner faith, not just faith, conviction in the working of karma, knowing that when we behave well, when we create positive actions, virtuous actions, we ourselves will reap the benefit from that in terms of, first off, securing a good state of rebirth in our next life, also securing good conditions for ourselves in future lives. That's the bare minimum, but also that it contributes to our own state of liberation, complete liberation from samsara. And even more than that, it contributes to our own state of perfection, to the state of Buddhahood. When we have the deep sense of conviction in the working of karma, it'd be really easier to joyously persevere. Without understanding the presentation of karma, not only understanding in a really academic way, but also trusting the presentation of karma, it'd be more hard going, don't you think? And so I think that for us, people from our background, the deep trust in the working of karma is still work in progress. And I said that also with respect to myself, being a monk. I was not born into a Buddhist family. No, I was born in Israel. I grew up in Israel. For the past 20 years, I've been living in Australia. And before that, I lived in India for a few years. But Buddhism was not my background. No, this is not my heritage. And so over the years, having attended teachings, having thought about those teachings, bit by bit, managed to, I think, transform my mind into accept the working of karma. But really, I think that for us, sometimes it's difficult because the working of karma also pretty much hinges on thinking and accepting the existence of past and future lives. And again, this is not the way that I was brought up. This is not my disposition. So, growing up in Israel, I was never a spiritual seeker. I wasn't interested in the big questions. I had no interest in existential questions. But at some point in my mid-20s, I came across Buddhism, and I thought that some of the things that Buddhism offered were quite interesting. And then I thought that they're quite useful. And then I started to hear more of the existence of past and future lives. And so bit by bit, my mind started to think about them, and also maybe bit by bit accept the existence of past and future lives. And then at some point, that also, after many years, I also took ordination. And when you take ordination, you have to do it based on the motivation of wanting to live cyclic existence, to emerge from cyclic existence. A motivation that is called renunciation. This is the most fundamental motivation that is necessary for taking ordination. And so to develop this mind of renunciation, you have to think of past and future lifetimes. There's you cannot hide away from that question. And I had a lot of struggle before taking ordination, in that I thought that really, I trust in a really shallow or superficial way. I trust the teachings of the Buddha, but really to take the next step to become a monk, I need to be convinced that it really works, that upon my death, I will take another rebirth, and that actions that I've done in this life will have some repercussions in future lives, that I will take all this karmic baggage with me from this lifetime to next lifetime, or whatever I experience in this lifetime, it's also connected to whatever I've done in previous lifetime. It's part and parcel of taking ordination. And so started to think about kind of those questions, and I came to the conclusion that even if it's not like 100% conviction, full trust in that, maybe I'm 98% or 99% sure. There's always be this maybe slight confusion or doubt or uncertainty about it. But the whole presentation still is connected. It is dependent on the ability to think of the existence of past and future lives. So if past and future lifetimes do exist, it means that my actions don't go to waste. There's some continuity. Actions that I do in this life leave imprints upon my continuum, and I experience the result of those actions in my next lifetime. And that being the case, I can then joyously persevere in doing the right thing, which will also have repercussions or good results, hopefully, in my next lifetime and beyond that. And so then, when we look at the different types of joyous efforts that are taught in the Mahayana system, we often think of, first off, an Ama-like joyous effort, Ama-like perseverance or enthusiasm. And this Ama-like joyous effort is one that is a joyous effort in which we set ourselves up for working really hard. In thinking, for example, that even if it takes me millions of eons to do that, billions of eons to do that, in which I have to complete limitless amount of collections, and I have to work hard again and again and again, I will still continue to do that. And as it says in the Guru Puja, and I think that maybe many of you are familiar with the Guru Puja, at some point it says, even for one sentence being alone, I will still continue to do that. So we need to have this massive intentionality to keep a mind going in joyous effort. And if we do develop that really sincere sense of joyous effort, we will be able to not only continue to work, but also sometimes with a light-hearted attitude. It wouldn't become a chore. Sometimes I have to say that my meditation is a chore. I have commitments that I have to do every day. Not every day I want to do it. Sometimes it does appear like a chore, but really, if I have deep sense of faith in the working of karma, I'm still working with that. Now, no one else will have to motivate me. I will motivate myself to do it because I will know that it will bear good result, good consequences. And so that's the first type of joyous effort. Armor like joyous effort. Do you understand, by the way, my accent? I think that sometimes when I say in Australia, armor like joyous effort, people look at me with like, I don't know what he's talking about. Is it clear? All right, cool. And so that's the first one. And then the next one is joyous effort in gathering virtuous actions, which means that particularly as bodhisattvas, we don't, we need to, in general, persevere. We need to be enthused about virtuous actions. But here in a Mahayana way, we also need to be enthused about the six perfections, to do whatever we can, whatever is in our capacity to practice generosity and ethics and patience and joyous effort and concentration and wisdom. The effort itself is a mammoth effort. It's not easy. So we need to have joyous effort in doing everything possible. Even the slightest positive action, we need to be joyous about it. And then we also need to have joyous effort in working for the sake of sentient beings. And so I had a look at Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation, and he speaks about joyous effort in working for the sake of sentient beings is doing, he speaks of, I think, as far as I remember, he speaks about 11 types of actions, actions that we take for the sake of sentient beings. And within those 11 actions, kind of he mentions things like, for example, causing others. I think that it's not that Lama Tsongkhapa mentions that straight off, but if you look at the footnotes, so if you look at other sources, then we have things like, for example, causing others to uphold the Dharma, causing others to increase their virtuous qualities, causing others to work for the benefit of sentient beings, eliminating suffering, removing obscurations, and so on and so forth, which means the joyous effort in working for the sake of sentient beings is more specific. It's looking at how do I help others to follow a Dharma path. After all, when we think of the meaning of bodhicitta, bodhicitta is the aspiration or the mind that aspires, that wants to become a Buddha in order to benefit others, in order to free them from suffering. And the best way that we can liberate others from suffering is to teach them the Dharma. In order to be able to teach others the Dharma, we need to become omniscient, in a sense that we need to know in an immediate way what the dispositions are of other sentient beings. That's the way that a Buddha turns the wheel of Dharma, through knowing the dispositions of others, knowing their mentality, what kind of teachings they need to be given, what is the, not only mentality, but intentions, biographies, historical context, cultural context, and so forth, to really be able to teach others, to meet others where they are. And so just effort in working for the sake of other sentient beings is more directed at how do I benefit others in a Dharma way? So these are the three types of joyous effort. And then in the common presentations of joyous effort, either when you look at a Lamrim text, and I think that the most available text that we have are the texts written by Lama Tsongkhapa based on Atisha's presentation of the states of the path of enlightenment, but also another great source, of course, is Shantideva's Guide to a Bodhisattva Way of Life. And in this text, in the 7th chapter, he gives a very extensive presentation of joyous effort, really poetic and really beautiful. And he says that to be able to practice joyous effort, we also need to rid ourselves of conditions which are not conducive for the development of enthusiasm about virtue. And basically, the things which are not conducive, or the thing which is not conducive, is laziness. And so the word laziness has a particular meaning in English. And when we look at laziness from a Buddhist perspective, or some of the meaning of laziness from a Buddhist perspective is different. We wouldn't call it in English laziness. We wouldn't necessarily call it laziness. So anyway, the first type of laziness that we need to rid ourselves of is laziness of indolence. Sometimes it is also called procrastination. And so often when we look at this type of laziness, we recognize that we can practice the Dhamma. Not only we can practice the Dhamma, that it is something that is worthwhile, it is meaningful, it is good for us. But still, even though we know all those kind of things, even though we know that we can do it, we don't do it. We don't engage in virtue. So we don't engage in virtue. And there are different things that we can do in order to reduce that sense of indolence. We can meditate on death and impermanence, thinking that actually I've wasted another day, and it's another day gone by. I've done not much for the sake of my own liberation and my own state of enlightenment. Thinking of how death is certain, the time of death is uncertain. Within that we think that every day, every moment, every hour, and so forth is bringing us closer and closer to the state of enlightenment. We don't have a lot of time left. Can be really powerful in terms of making better effort, more concentrated effort in doing something meaningful, virtuous. But also we can think of what awaits for us in future lifetimes, not only thinking of death and impermanence, but also in thinking that really, if I don't get my act together, I want to say my bum on the cushion, but maybe I shouldn't say that. So if I don't push myself to do better, then taking into consideration that I've also done quite a lot of negative stuff in my life, not only in this life, but also in previous lifetime. And if I still continue to waste my time in not knowing or understanding what's the right thing to do, it is likely that I will end up in a miserable state of rebirth in my next lifetime. And not only I will undergo great amount of suffering, also I will be bereft of an opportunity to really turn my mind to what is virtuous. I will lack the mental capacity to do so. And so thinking about it is helpful in terms of reducing a sense of indolence or procrastination. So is anyone here subject to procrastination apart from me? Do you find yourself procrastinating? Yeah. I think that I've perfected procrastination. I think that probably if we have a procrastination competition, I might be kind of getting gold medal. Karen, do you have a question or? All right, cool.
No, I was just raising my hand to say, yes, I procrastinate.
Okay, cool. And so that's the first type of hindrance, and often it is described as an obstacle for engaging with virtuous actions from the very outset, from the get-go. But then we also have other types of procrastinations that get in the way for doing the right thing. Another one is it is called procrastination of being attracted to ignoble activities. Basically, it means that we don't have our priorities set in the right way. It is being attracted to things which are of inferior or lesser importance. And so we can think of things which are quite obvious, like, for example, it's so easier for me to binge on a good TV show. It's so hard for me to do half an hour of meditation. So sometimes really I find myself in the evening when I think of I haven't completed all my commitments, my meditation commitment. I still have an hour to go. I start browsing something on YouTube, social media, and I find myself after 1 hour, 1.5 hours, still kind of scrolling and looking and checking and reading and so on and so forth. And I get so bogged in those things. And I leave my meditation practice to when I'm really tired, when I have to rush through it. So this is a really easy and maybe somewhat superficial, but very common example of being attracted to the ignoble. But also I think that in general, when we look at maybe a combination of procrastination and being attracted to ignoble activities. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine, when I was late for this session, about retirement. And she said that she's waiting for her retirement to be able to do something meaningful with her life. So maybe there's a something that is common to both procrastination, but also being attracted to the ignoble. The thing that currently, the most important thing that I can do is amass, to have more possessions, more money, more comfort, and so on and so forth, so that later on I'll be able to spend more time in doing Dharma practice. Basically, it's thinking that now money and comfort is more important. So of course, both of them are important. It's not that one of them is not important at all. It's not that comfort or making sure that we have enough to get by. It's important. But also we need to still be reminded of death and impermanence, that we might not get there to retirement or to when we can practice, to next week, next year, or whenever. And so that's another type of laziness that we need to rid ourselves of. And we can think of the drawbacks of attachment, how attachment causes us suffering in this life, it causes us suffering in next life. We perform actions, we accumulate actions which contribute to suffering here and hereafter, because we are so attached to comforts of this life. So basically, I think that when I word it differently, rather than saying that we're attached to what is ignoble, it's having a wrong sense of priorities, not really working out what is really important for us long term. So thinking of the drawbacks of attachment and also death and impermanence is really good in terms of reducing a sense of attachment and being able to work out our priorities in a better way. And it takes time, in order for it to become really genuine, a sense of priorities that sits or that is being set in a mind in a really firm way. It takes probably months and years and decades to really work it out. But we still need to pay attention to that, at least to have that knowledge or understanding at the tip of our fingers. Then we have another type of laziness, which in English is not regarded as laziness at all. And it's called laziness of having self-contempt, telling ourselves that we're incapable of doing it, that someone like me can never attain the state of enlightenment. Someone like me can never be patient, that someone like me can never be a good Dharma practitioner. Not only we tell ourselves those things, but we also believe in our own misconceptions of ourselves. And so Lama Tsongkhapa in his text describes it in a really beautiful way. He says that there are a few areas that we can look at. We can look at how we are discouraged with respect to the goal. Our goal is to become Buddha. Our goal is to get rid of, to get out of cyclic existence. So being discouraged about the goal and thinking that someone like me can never become Buddha because I'm so damaged. There are things in my mind stream which are so set. Anger is part of my mind stream. Stupidity is part of my mind stream. Jealousy and narrow-mindedness is part of who I am. One good antidote to that is reflection on Buddha nature. None of us is devoid of Buddha nature. Not only it is found in Buddhist teachings that all of us have Buddha nature, but also if you look at other texts, such as, for example, Maitreya's Uttara Tantra Shastra, the jewel, the unsurpassed continuum, which teaches so in such a beautiful way, such an inspiring way, the fact that all living beings have Buddha nature. We come to see that those limitations, which are currently present in our mind, are not inherent, they're not ingrained within the mind. They are there in an adventitious way. If we come to recognize the very nature of our mind. First of all, the conventional nature of the mind, which means that our mind is cognizance. It is knowledge, but also clarity. And through that, we engage with ourselves and with everything around us. That's the conventional nature of the mind, clarity and cognition, but also the ultimate nature of the mind, emptiness. We understand that there is no fault which is ingrained within the nature of the mind. Anger is not the nature of our mind. And jealousy and pride and attachment, all afflictive states of mind are not ingrained within the nature of the mind. They're there because we have imprints. They're there because we come across external conditions. They're there because we pay incorrect mental attention to things around us and also within ourselves, which accentuate ignorance. They're an extension of our ignorance and anger, attachment, and so forth. But those things which arise and depends upon cause and conditions are not ingrained within the mind. If we cultivate the right cause and conditions, that can be eliminated. And so being discouraged about the goal, telling yourself that someone like me can never attain the state of enlightenment, no way I'll be able to leave samsara, is a complete fallacy. It's a fabrication of our own mind. So that's a really powerful antidote for self-contempt, putting yourself down in relation to the goal. But also when we think of another type of discouragement that Lama Tsongkhapa describes, he says that there is also this a sense of discouragement regarding the means or what I will have to do in order to get myself out of cyclic existence and become Buddha. After all, when we hear about the general presentation of saying that, in order to become Buddha, just like the original Buddha, we need to first of all develop bodhicitta. Not only bodhicitta in general, it needs to be an uncontrived bodhicitta, which means that this coarse effort will no longer be required. Whoever we're going to encounter, just thinking of another living being, an uncontrived, spontaneous sense of compassion will arise in our mind. To be able to get to that stage where this spontaneous, balanced compassion arises with respect to all living being, oh my God, how much effort is required? Particularly now when we think of something, maybe one could think about the current political sphere in the US and in Israel or elsewhere around the world, is that it can really highlight the fact that it's so difficult to develop spontaneous compassion. And this is what we need to do, to continue to work on developing spontaneous compassion in order to be able to develop bodhicitta. Without getting too political here, but I know a few of the people here, and we've been talking, in the last couple of years and last few months and weeks and so forth. You had an election not long ago in the US. It's so polarized, so difficult not to get so fearful and angry and anxious, all the range of emotions. And same thing also happens, of course, in Israel. And I guess that when you live in Europe, when you look at what's happening between Russia and the Ukraine, or when I follow also the Australian politics, and every place that is influenced by politics, which are becoming more and more polarized, is going through a similar trend. But anyway, in order to develop compassion, which is impartial compassion, encompassing everyone, even the people that you don't like in the political sphere, I need a lot of work. I need still a lot of work. There's a lot of work ahead of me. And so it is said that the Buddha first off developed uncontrived bodhicitta based on uncontrived compassion. kind of, a sudden thought arose in my mind about the three principal aspects of the path, a text by Lama Tsongkhapa. But Bongka Rinpoche added a verse to that text describing the stage in which you develop uncontrolled bodhicitta. And it says roughly, kind of, if I paraphrase what it says, now, when you get to the point where you feel like you're like a mother whose only child has fallen into a pit of fire, and you're willing to jump head on into that pit of fire to save your child, only child, from that pit of fire, and you have that attitude with respect to each and every living being, then you've developed uncontrived bodhicitta. So are we there yet? No, do we have uncontrived bodhicitta? I mean, I don't have it. Still have a lot of work ahead of me. And so it is said that first off, uncontrived bodhicitta. Then the Buddha worked for 3 great countless eons. I guess that if we work out the numbers, if we try to crunch them, how many years is 1 countless eons? Then we have 3 great countless eons. How many years are there? Probably lots of zeros, multiple zeros shooting about, in all directions. And then at the end, he was able to attain the state of Buddha. And all along, there's a practice of the 6 perfections. So when you think about the means, I'll have to do it over and over again, generosity and ethics and patience and so forth. For each and every sentient beings that will have to undergo a lot of suffering, we get discouraged. So that's the next sense of discouragement that we need to work with. Discouragement about the means. And Shantideva says in his Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, he says that it is true that it requires a lot of effort to do it, but this is our choice. It is my choice now to undergo a little bit of hardship to attain freedom from suffering. Not only to attain freedom from suffering, also to attain the state of enlightenment for the sake of others. And considering our options, now if we get discouraged about the means, what are the other options that we have? We can either work hard in order to attain liberation and enlightenment, or we can just remain in our current state of existence. And if we remain in a current state of existence, we will continue to do it over and over and over again. In this lifetime, we experience difficulties. We cannot shy away from that, but it is nothing in comparison with the difficulties that we will experience, can experience, might experience, could experience in future lifetimes. Things will get even harder. So we have a choice here. Either do it now with somewhat reduced sense of hardship and progress along the way, or to not do anything and just experience more suffering in the future. So this is a way of thinking, an antidote to being discouraged about the means. And also Shantideva says that we also understand that this is where we practice. We here practice in samsara. Not only that, he says that, as far as I remember, he says that bodhisattvas, when they practice in samsara, they continue to benefit other sentient beings. They understand Buddha nature. They understand the empty nature of reality. They create virtue, which means that the creation of virtue leads to more happiness and well-being to those bodhisattvas. So they are, you can say, in a samsaric state, but they're not beset by the suffering of samsara. They do not experience the amount of suffering that we experience in samsara. So it's being here and now, but reducing the amount of suffering and angst and fear and anxiety and narrow-mindedness with respect to where we are. Not only that, I think that we're all, I think that many of us have had experience of amazing spiritual teachers. I mean, Lama Zopa, the spiritual director of the FBMT. I met him a few times in my life, and I was always in awe of his ability to really work hard for the sake of difficult people. I mean, working in general, working for sentient beings can be difficult, but working Dharma centers is difficult. Not always, but sometimes you kind of from time to time, it is hard going. I mean, maybe Dundu can can relate to that, but really, I lived at Chinrezig Institute for 18 years. It is not a work in the park. No, it is not eating cheesecake every day. It can be sometimes hard going, and you can really pull your hair out from time to time. And Lama Zopa, I mean, the amount of patience that he had for the most difficult people that I have encountered in my life at Chinrezig Institute was just incredible, so inspiring. I mean, not giving up, but also just sitting with them and giving them all of his time and energy with a great sense of love and affection. I mean, this is what I want to be. I want to be like him. And I want to be like his Holiness Dalai Lama. I mean, it's quite incredible to think that, I think that when you live at a place like Chinrezig Institute, which is a community, no, it's not a big community, it's a small community. So sometimes small problems are really magnified in your mind. They become like, a massive crisis disaster. And someone like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, at a time had, 160, 170 centers. For him, for the central office, it's like every day like that. Complaints and problems and crises and this thing happening, the other thing happening. People are complaining from all directions. Of course, there are good things which are happening as well, but much of the time is taken for crisis management, and they don't give up. Not only they don't give up, they're joyously persevere. This is what I want to do. No, I want to joyously persevere in that way. So understanding that this is where we work, and also being able to be happy about it is another tool that we use in order to rid ourselves of that sense of discouragement. And so far, when we've been speaking about joyous effort, being enthused about virtue. And so I spoke so far about what joyous effort is, being enthused about virtue. I spoke about where joyous effort was taught in the context of the perfections. Spoke about types of joyous effort and also what is not conducive about joyous effort. I wanted to do it just for a few minutes, but it's almost an hour. And now it's the time to look at the 4 conditions, favorable conditions for joyous effort. So how are we doing so far? Any questions or objections? All right. Another thing before we continue with the 4 conditions which are favorable, conducive for the development of joyous effort, I just wanted to add one more thing.
Shayla might have a question.
All right, Shela.
Actually, Jennifer has a question.
Oh,
Right. Sorry, didn't see Jennifer putting her hand up. Jennifer?
Yeah. So, at the very beginning, when you were talking about the 6 perfections, you used interchangeably giving and attachment. Can you explain that a little bit better? I'm having a little bit trouble understanding attachment and how that relates to giving.
All right. And so what limits our ability to give is attachment.
Okay.
And so when we look at the perfection of generosity, it is said that there are 3 types of generosity. Sometimes they're described as 4 types, sometimes they're described as 3 types. So basically, there's material generosity, that's the first one. And within material generosity, I mean, of course, we have, we can think of different things. We have our possessions. We have the money that we have, but also within that, we can also think of giving away our own body. So what limits our ability to give with a heart that is really open, really be happy to give, is attachment. And we can assess that when we think of our capacity to give to people who are either close to our heart or not that close to our heart. When I think of first of my siblings, and I think of how much can I give them out of the money that I have, I can give them maybe a great deal, maybe everything that I have. I never put it to the test, but I would like to think that if I imagine it, I'll be able to give them a lot. When I think of also my Buddhist teachers, who I also feel close to, I'll be able to give them a lot. When I think of people who are not that close to my heart, I'll be able to give them less. When I think of people that, strangers, and when I think of people that I dislike, it'll be put to the question.
Yeah.
And so, that's indicative of the sense of attachment that we have. That's one thing. But also there are other types of attachments. There are other types of generosity that we can practice. One of them is generosity of giving fearlessness, which means it's a type of generosity in which we protect others from fear. And there are different things which can be included within that. Like, for example, it's common in Asia, Southeast Asia, to engage in animal liberation. We buy tons of fish and seafood and turtles and so forth and release them to the ocean. At Chenrezig Institute, just an anecdote, we had many years ago, we had a few bouts of animal liberation practices. We went down to a local fish and chip shop and we ordered shrimp and other types of seafood and fish. And we then told them where we're going to release them. And they informed some of the fishermen friends of that event so that whatever were released went back to the ocean and then went back into the cages and nets of those fishermen. So then we moved on from releasing fish and seafood to the ocean. We moved on to releasing crickets to the jungle where we live. That was probably less destructive. Anyway, animal liberation practice is one example, but also I think that people experience also mental fear. So being able to give good advice, being able to spend some time with people, being able to listen to people, even if we don't have much to say or good advice, sometimes just being able to give someone a shoulder to cry upon. That's also, you can say, an example of generosity, of giving fearlessness. And I see that from my own, sometimes from my own reaction that in some situations, my capacity is quite limited. I think that I don't want to do it. I'm too busy. I don't want their mental garbage I don't want them to dump their mental garbage upon me. It's just kind of really selfish reactions that I have sometimes. So practicing generosity of giving fearlessness is really developing a sense of closeness to other, love and compassion and so forth, and being able to listen to others. That's the second type of generosity. And again, I think that what hinders that is a sense of attachment. This is my time. This is what I want to do. This is my priorities. This is my space, and so on and so forth. So a sense of attachment. And then generosity of giving the Dharma. That's the most noble, best type of generosity. And so without, I think that without the sense of attachment that we have is not necessarily to the Dharma, but also maybe, it could happen that we think that I don't want others to be as knowledgeable as I am. I still want to have power over others. There are things which, there are sets of teachings which make me really special. If I share it with others around, I will not be that special. I don't think that there is much danger for us in general, including me. I am including me in that group. I don't think that there is a great danger for that to occur to us. So for us, it's mostly that generosity, being attached to the things that we have, to the time that we have and so forth. That's the type of things that will hinder the practice of generosity. So when we practice generosity, and it's mainly the main type of generosity is, the essence of generosity is mental, in that we train our mind in giving, in the willingness to give. we're working directly against that sense of attachment. Is it all right?
I completely understand. Thank you for explaining that. Yeah.
And so then, in order to practice, so just one thing that I wanted to add, in the general presentation of the 6 perfections, it is said that in general, to practice the concentration of shamatha, to develop the concentration of shamatha, we have to have joyous effort, to be enthused. Otherwise, it's really difficult. But also in general, not only for joyous effort, but also in general for anything virtuous that we do, which is aiming at releasing ourselves, liberating ourselves from samsara, that is aiming at becoming Buddha, we need joyous effort. And so we also need to develop the 4 conducive conditions for joyous effort. And those 4 conducive conditions are called the power of esteem. And I'll get to that soon. So we have the power of esteem, the power of stability, also called the power of steadfastness, to be steady, steadfast. That's the second. The power of joy. And then finally, that's the part that I really like, is the power of rest. It's called the power of suspension or the power of relinquishment, being able to take a rest when needed. But that will come at the end. First off, we'll start looking at the power of esteem. And so the word for esteem in Tibetan is merba. Now, the word merba in Tibetan can be translated in different ways. It has different connotations. We study within the FMT, we study a text that is called Mind and Mental Factors, and merba is one of them, and often it is translated as belief. But when you look at the definition of that sense of merba or belief, I think that it goes way more than just believing something. It is said that you're certain about things that you have ascertained, so that your mind will no longer be swayed away from it. Which means that I sense, the way that I understand merba in Tibetan is that it has a sense of conviction. A sense of conviction which is born from knowledge, not born from understanding. And of course, sometimes we have a sense of conviction which comes from blind faith. So when I said blind faith, when I used the term, in English, I think that it has maybe a somewhat negative or pejorative connotation. But still, I think that in general, having blind faith is better than having no faith whatsoever. I mean, even if we have blind faith, if it can keep us away from behaving in a negative way, and if it helps us to have faith in our spiritual teachers and open our mind to teachings, I mean, it's great. If I had blind faith in the working of karma, if I had blind faith in the existence of past and future lifetime, that would have been, I guess, way more powerful in my spiritual practice. So having blind faith is good, but better than that is having an informed faith that is born from knowledge. And this is where I think that the spiritual programs, the education programs of FBMT is a great asset. So before taking up the job of the translator for Chenrezig Institute in Australia, I started 10 years ago. I studied a bit. I did my first few courses in Buddhism in Israel, and then I attended a few teachings in India, and then I lived in India for some time, and I thought that I had some understanding of Buddhism. I thought that I'm on a solid ground, but really only after joining the ranks of Chenrezig Institute, and I started to study basic program and the advanced study program, the master's program, and also, of course, doing here in the Discovering Buddhism modules. Only then I was able to really work on developing a more integrative and comprehensive and consolidating different teachings into one complete full understanding, which I'm still, for me, it's still work in progress. But only then, bit by bit, I was able to really become more sure, to develop a sense of assurance that the Buddha's teachings can lead me to where I am at the moment, to the state of liberation and also the state of enlightenment. But also within that, also understanding what my capacities are, where my limitations are, understanding what do I need to do now, what's my focus now, and what I should also do in order to make sure that I progress from this lifetime to the next, working towards the state of liberation. All of that takes a lot of time to study. And so when I say a lot of time, I don't want to discourage you or discourage myself, but I think that if we, in a sense, if we take our Buddhist involvement as a long-term involvement, in which we think that so long as I live, so long as I'm alive, I still need to study to develop my mind, to develop my understanding. It develops a sense of endurance. And we have a somewhat lesser expectation of ourselves. If we have a lesser degree of expectation of ourselves, we'll be able to better deal with disappointment. Our notion of ourselves would be more in touch with reality. We'd be able to have a sense of continuity and stability, which will work for us in a much better way in the long term. So that comes from knowledge, from understanding. And it doesn't have to be a competition, right? We are not competing in knowledge. We're just making sure that we have a solid foundation for progressing along the way. And so I started off with speaking about the word merba in Tibetan, which has a connotation of being convinced. But in order to become convinced, I'll just say another thing about merba. Also in a tantric context, in tantric set of teachings, merba is taken to be visualization. We're able to visualize the deity. We use the word merba for that. There are other words to describe visualizations, but one of them is merba. And when I think of merba in that sense, when I imagine myself as a deity, or when I imagine a deity in front of me, at some point I need to become convinced that I am the deity. I need to become convinced that in front of me there is a deity. It's the same word, merba, which carries a sense of conviction. So I think that it's quite interesting to think about it, just in terms of how it fits a tantric practice. But anyway, going back to the first part, the power of esteem, the word merba was used for that. So through developing a good understanding, developing an in-depth understanding, we develop a sense of esteem towards the Dhamma in general. But more specifically, we develop a sense of esteem and interest in the working of Dhamma, in the working of karma. So when we study about karma in general, we come across the teachings on karma when we study a presentation of the Lamrim. So we study about the general characteristics of karma. We study about the specific characteristics of karma. So, in terms of the general characteristics, we say that karma is certain, karma is definite, that actions that we have done do not go to waste, that we do not meet up with the results of actions that we have not done, that karma increases and magnifies as time goes by. But also specifically, when we look at specific characteristics of karma, we'll look at, for example, the presentation of the 10 non-virtues, the presentation of the 10 virtues, but also we study karma or actions from the point of view of the results. Like, for example, one type of result is fruitional result, in that if we, for example, kill a living being, the result would be being born in a miserable state of rebirth. If we kill another living being motivated by hatred or anger or just kind of intense ill will, the result of that is said to be a hellish state of rebirth. So that's called a fruitional result. And then we have environmental result, which has to do with the general environment that we experience. If we harm others, if we physically harm others, an environmental result could be, for example, being born in a place which is more susceptible to war and conflicts, or maybe maybe climate disasters, and so on and so forth. If we engage in activities such as lying or slander and so forth, we're born in an environment which is harsh, susceptible to sickness and plagues or impurities and so on and so forth. These are environmental results. Then we have results which are similar to the cause. One of them is in terms of our experience. So we we kill someone in this life. We might have killed someone in a previous life. In this life, we experience a shorter life, or a life that is subject to sickness or much suffering and so on and so forth. So that's a result similar to the cause in terms of our experience. But the worst of all, the worst result is the mental habituation that we develop. So results similar to the cause in terms of habits. So if we keep anger unchecked, we give way to anger. We don't try to apply antidotes to anger. We're creating habits, imprints, which reinforce our tendencies to lash out at others out of anger, to harm others out of anger. This is the worst because it causes us to not only reinforce a sense of our afflictions, and thereby it postpones our exodus of samsara. But on top of that, it just reinforces the suffering that we experience within cyclic existence. That's the worst of all, the habits that we create. And so, again, I link it up with the power of esteem, the power of conviction. We have to develop conviction in the working of karma, which is based on understanding. So for that, we need to give ourselves the time to study, but also not only to give ourselves the time, also if we can become enthused about studying, about reading, about discussing, about meditating on that, it will benefit us in the long term. We'll be able to persevere. We'll be able to have a practice that is full of joy and happiness, focusing on ourselves and focusing on others in a much better way. And so in general, when we speak of karma, in general, we can say that the power of conviction, esteem, interest begins with trusting that negative actions will result in suffering in samsara. And therefore, we become joyous about being able to avoid negative actions, to shun negative actions. We become kind of more enthused about it. But it doesn't have to be kind of this enthusiasm in which our mind is brimming with happiness. Like we cannot contain the happiness in avoiding negative actions. I don't know if it happens. I mean, avoiding negative actions can be sometimes quite difficult, particularly when our sense of attachment gets in the way. You know that something is not good for you, but you really want to do it. So, but when you notice what you should do, it's good for you and it will yield a good result. First of all, there's you open a window, you create a gap. There's something positive in the horizon. It's way easier to do it if you trust that it will be good for you. But not only good for you, it will also be good for others. So shunning negative actions, but also understanding and knowing that virtuous actions will bring about positive result, will bring happiness to myself and happiness to others. So that's the most basic trust in the working of karma. But more specifically, I spoke of the general characteristics of karma and the specific characteristics of karma, and negative actions bringing suffering, positive actions bringing happiness. Most specifically, being certain about the Mahayana practice, the practice of the six perfections. So in order to be certain about the practice of the six perfections, because we are speaking of joyous effort in a Mahayana context, again, we need to become more knowledgeable of the six perfections. But also we need to give ourselves the time to become more acquainted with the six perfections. It doesn't need to happen in an urgent way, like a one-ditch effort to understand well the six perfections so that I can practice it immediately. It is a mammoth project that takes years to develop a better and better understanding of the six perfections, and then to embody the six perfections. We don't have to rush it. It will happen in a natural way if we give ourselves the time and space to study, to think about it, and then more genuinely to put it into practice in a daily life. And so when we speak of the six perfections, developing convictions in the six perfections, Shantideva speaks about it greatly in his Gata Bodhisattva way of life. And so he says, basically from verse, let's see if I can share this on the screen. Dundrup, if you're still with us, can you make me a co-host so that I can share something on the screen, please? If it's Dundrup or someone else, I don't know who's the moderator for this session. I'm a co-host. I cracked the system. All right, let's do it. And so Shantideva says, in relation to the power of esteem, developing that strong sense of conviction in the working of karma, but also deciding that I will live my life, I will lead my practice in a way that accords with the working of karma. It says, when we develop that strong intentionality, I will destroy the boundless misdeeds of others and myself. At that time, each of these misdeeds will be exhausted in an ocean of eons. So we spoke about removing or reducing conditions which are not conducive for joyous effort, reducing laziness about the goal, and laziness with respect to the means. So it goes hand in hand with also developing conducive conditions. If I develop conducive conditions, I will also reduce those conditions which are not conducive. So I will destroy the boundless misdeeds of others and myself. At that time, each of these misdeeds will be exhausted in an ocean of eons. It will not take me an ocean of eons, but if within myself I do not perceive even a fraction of the endeavor for exhausting these misdeeds, then I have become an abode for boundless sufferings. Why does my heart not burst? Shantideva says again, I have options here. I can either work hard for countless eons to reduce each one of my faults. If I'm not committed to do it, and I still have a lot of limitations, I just have one small fraction of those great qualities. Why does my heart not lament, not burst in agony for not being able to fulfill my goal? So setting such intentionality, Shantideva says, and he also says that he lists down in this text all the things that he hasn't done yet. And he says that since I haven't done it, it's not surprising that I haven't attained or achieved the goal yet. And so he says, if I just share a couple of more verses from what Shantideva says. He says from verse 37, for example, he says, I have not made offerings to the Bhagavan, to the Buddha. I have not given the pleasure of great festivals. I have not performed actions for the teachings. I have not fulfilled the wishes of the poor. I have not granted fearlessness to the frightened, and I have not given happiness to the wretched. All I have given rise to are the agonies of the mother's womb and suffering. The agonies in the mother's womb and suffering. And so when I read through that earlier on, I thought to myself that it's interesting, because often we think, when we think of the expectations that we have of ourselves, of our own spiritual practice, we often think that, I've been practicing for 2 years, for 5 years, for 10 years, and I still experience suffering. I've been practicing all that long, and I'm still getting angry. I've been practicing so deeply, and people are still being harsh to me. I've been practicing for such a long time. I've been doing medicine Buddha mantras for years, and I still get sick. So in that sense, I think that, I've encountered that in myself and others quite a few times in the past. And I think that the attitude that we have often is such a short-term attitude. We expect that the practice that we have engaged with up until now will solve our problems, our samsaric problems. We don't think about it long-term, eons and eons and eons to the future, in which we'll increase the great qualities that we will amass, and will bit by bit reduce our faults. So even Shantideva here is that a great bodhisattva. Even Shantideva here says, I haven't done it yet. I have not done actions for the teachings. I have not practiced generosity of giving, fearlessness. Haven't done this and that. I haven't met Shantideva in person, and I doubt it that it's really true that he hasn't done actions for the teachings. But still, when we have, I think that the message here that Shantideva gives is that when we have the grandiose ideas of ourselves as being kind of full-on practitioners, still in the great scheme of things, we have a long way to go. No, and it's cool. I might be practicing Dharma for the sake of others, but I haven't done it and I cannot do it to the extent of Kyabje Lama Sopa Rinpoche. I have a long way to go. I'm practicing the Dharma, but I'm still not yet doing it like the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or like Sita Rinpoche, or like Geshe Sherab, or like this and that. I still have a long way to go, and therefore I should have lesser expectation of myself in terms of the results that my practice can yield at this point in time. But then Shantideva also says in relation to the power of esteem, he says, the Muni himself has said that interest is the root of every class of virtue. Its root is constant acquaintance with the ripening result. Sorry, I haven't shared it with you. I'll put it on the screen. All right. The Muni himself has said that interest is the root of every class of virtue. Its root is constant acquaintance with the ripening result. And so often when you hear description of a certain process by which we develop our mind, it says that we begin with faith. And the most basic faith is faith, let's say, faith in, for example, the working of karma. Actually, we speak of, when we study minds and mental factors, we speak about clear faith, being able to see a particular thing and recognize the qualities. It is a kind of clear faith. We have that, for example, to see the qualities of our spiritual teacher, in which the mind becomes illuminated, clear and illuminated due to the power of faith. But we can also have faith, which hopefully is born from knowledge in the working of karma, which then brings us to the next step, which is yearning faith, wishing faith, I want to attain those qualities in my own mind. I want to become like His Holiness Dalai Lama. I want to practice in a way that accords with karma, so that my qualities will flourish, so that my faults, my defects will diminish. That's yearning faith, to the point in which I develop conviction, merba in Tibetan, or what I referred to earlier, conviction that there's not a way for me to proceed, to move on, other than practicing in a way that accords with karma, cause and effect. And when we think that there's no other way for me to proceed, this is what I have to do, and it develops in a natural way, we can also become happy about it, or enthused about it, with joyous effort. This is the power of esteem, and so, or interest. So here, just in English, kind of the first power, which is called the power of esteem, is also translated as aspiration. It's also translated as interest. It's also translated as conviction. So all of them, I can say, are encapsulated in the word merba, right? So we have esteem in the working of karma. We have aspiration to attain good states due to better states, due to a practice that accords with karma. We are convinced that this is the way that we need to move forward. So Shantideva says, suffering, mental unhappiness, the various kinds of fear, as well as separation from what is desired, will arise from negative deeds. By performing virtues intended in the mind, wherever I go, due to those merits, there I shall be honored with the excellences that are the result. So trusting in the working of karma. Although one who commits misdeeds wishes for happiness wherever he goes, he or she, there those misdeeds will completely destroy them with the weapons of suffering. And he concludes that with the next 3 verses. And he says, as a result of virtue, I will become a spiritual child of the Sugatas, a bodhisattva, dwelling in the hearts of vast, fragrant, and cool lotuses. The foot of the victor's pleasant speech will cause my splendor to grow. My supreme body will emerge from a lotus that will unfold due to the light of the munis, and will abide in the presence of the victors. So poetic, so beautiful, kind of thinking of ourselves, kind of being born from a lotus flower in the presence of the Buddha. As a result of many non-virtues, I will be very wretched, due to all my skin without exception being ripped off by the henchmen of Yama. Molten copper, melted by tremendous heat, will be put into my body. Pierced by flaming swords and daggers, my flesh will be cut into hundreds of pieces, and I shall plummet upon fiercely blazing iron grounds. That's a reference to the hells. And therefore, he says, that's the conclusion of the first power, the power of esteem. He says, the power of conviction. Therefore, I should be interested in virtue, and with great respect acquaint myself with it. Having undertaken through the procedure of Vajradvaja, I should cultivate pride. The cultivation of pride belongs to the next power, and we will speak about it in our next session next week. And so I think that we have 1 more minute for this session. I didn't leave time for questions or comments or objections. So I'm wondering, do you have any questions or queries or things that you wanted to share before we leave it here for today? Mary Jo? Mary Jo or just Mary?
Either is fine.
All right.
And I just want to say thank you. This is very,
Thank you very much, Mary. And so thank you very much for joining in today. And again, I apologize for being confused about the starting time. I will be more on the ball next week. And so we shall end up with a couple of dedication prayers, dedicating all the virtues that we have created together here. And since we are developing joyous effort for becoming Buddha, we shall dedicate our virtue in the following way. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta that is not arisen arise and grow, and may that which is arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all sentient beings without exception into that enlightened state. And a couple of verses for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, but also for the flourishing of his activities in the land. And when we read through that, we can also think of all the other spiritual teachers that we follow, be it Geshe Sherab or all other teachers that you are connected with. So in the land encircled by snow mountains, you're the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. Savior of the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings, who makes extremely clear the path that is unification of emptiness and compassion. To the Lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And finally, long life prayer for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So that was, of course, composed during the time that Lama Zopa Rinpoche was still with us. And so if I rephrase it, we can read it as a prayer that aspires for him to come back quickly to us. So you uphold this Bureau's moral code, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Majjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Several of myself and others, your disciples, please come back to us before too long. So thank you. By the way, just an anecdote. A few months ago, I was in India, and I went up to see Kyabje Ling Rinpoche together with the Tushita people, who asked him to make prayers for the swift return of Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And interestingly, that was really interesting. Ling Rinpoche said at that point that it's actually best not to rush through that process. He said that we as students, we need to accumulate a lot of causes and conditions for having a most favorable rebirth for our teacher, Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And he says that if you try to push to rush through that, you might have, Lama Zopa Rinpoche may appear again, but maybe conditions would not be favorable conditions. And he actually spoke about it in a really interesting way. He said that sometimes it can happen that a child is born and they die quickly after that, or they remain alive only for 6 months, only for 3 years. Or maybe that they are born, but their mental faculties are not well developed, or maybe they're not that smart. So then to get the full magnificence of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, just like we had in this life, we just need to give it time, not to push. So we continue with making prayers. And I think that that's also, when you think about also other spiritual teachers that you might have, it's the same thing. We aspire for the best conditions to be encountered for them so that we can be benefited by them. So that's this short anecdote. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Venerable Dundrup, for organizing these sessions and all the other people which are involved with Thupten Nobling Center. It is a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Venerable.